Hashtag the truth about supplements. What science actually says. HealthCore Daily. Every single year, Americans spend over $35 billion on dietary supplements. Protein powders, multivitamins, fish oil capsules, pre-workouts, fat burners, collagen drinks, the shelves are absolutely overflowing. And the marketing promises are extraordinary. Build more muscle. Live longer. Burn fat while you sleep. Boost your immunity overnight. But here is the question nobody seems to be asking loudly enough: what does the science actually say? Because the gap between what supplement companies promise and what peer-reviewed research confirms is wider than most people realize. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the supplement industry, examining the real evidence, and giving you the honest truth about what works, what is overhyped, and what might actually be harming you. The supplement industry operates in a regulatory space that surprises most consumers. Unlike pharmaceutical drugs, dietary supplements in the United States are not required to prove their effectiveness before reaching store shelves. The FDA regulates supplements under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, which means manufacturers are largely responsible for ensuring their own product safety. The agency only steps in after a product has already caused documented harm. This regulatory gap creates a marketplace where extraordinary claims can be made with relatively modest scientific backing. A company can legally say a product supports immune health without ever conducting a single clinical trial proving that claim. Understanding this foundation is essential before evaluating any supplement, because it explains why the marketing language and the actual science so frequently diverge. Let us start with perhaps the most popular supplement category on earth: protein powder. The global protein supplement market is valued at over $20 billion annually, and the fundamental premise is sound. Protein is essential for muscle repair, immune function, and dozens of metabolic processes. Research consistently shows that adequate protein intake supports muscle protein synthesis, particularly after resistance training. Studies published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition confirm that consuming 20 to 40 grams of high-quality protein post-workout does meaningfully support muscle recovery and growth. So far, so good. However, the critical nuance is this: most people in developed countries already consume sufficient protein through whole foods. If you are eating eggs, chicken, legumes, dairy, or fish regularly, adding a protein shake may simply be adding redundant calories. The supplement is not magic, it is just convenient food. For athletes training at high volumes or individuals genuinely struggling to meet protein targets through diet alone, protein powder serves a legitimate purpose. For the average gym-goer already eating reasonably well, the benefit is marginal at best. Now let us talk about creatine, because this is genuinely one of the most well-researched supplements in existence. Over 500 peer-reviewed studies have examined creatine monohydrate, and the evidence is remarkably consistent. Creatine works by increasing phosphocreatine stores in muscle tissue, which helps regenerate ATP, your primary energy currency, during high-intensity, short-duration activities like weightlifting and sprinting. Meta-analyses consistently show that creatine supplementation improves performance in these activities by approximately 10 to 15%. More recent research from institutions like the University of Saskatchewan is also exploring creatine's cognitive benefits, particularly for sleep-deprived individuals and older adults. At roughly 3 to 5 grams per day of basic creatine monohydrate, this is one supplement where the science legitimately supports the marketing. It is affordable, safe for healthy individuals, and it demonstrably does what it claims to do. Fish oil occupies an interesting middle ground. For decades, omega-3 fatty acid supplements were considered almost universally beneficial, particularly for cardiovascular health. Early observational studies showed that populations eating high amounts of fatty fish had dramatically lower rates of heart disease. Supplement manufacturers ran with this data aggressively. However, more rigorous randomized controlled trials have produced complicated results. The ASCEND trial, involving over 15,000 participants, found that omega-3 supplementation did not significantly reduce major cardiovascular events in people with diabetes. The STRENGTH trial was actually stopped early after finding no benefit in people with existing heart disease risk factors. Yet the REDUCE-IT trial, using a highly concentrated prescription-grade omega-3 called eicosapentaenoic acid, showed a 25% reduction in cardiovascular events. The lesson here is critical: the form, dose, and purity of a supplement matters enormously. Standard drugstore fish oil capsules and pharmaceutical-grade concentrated EPA are not the same product, and treating them as equivalent is a significant scientific error. Vitamin D is another supplement with a fascinating and genuinely complicated evidence base. Around 40% of American adults are estimated to be deficient in vitamin D, primarily due to limited sun exposure, indoor lifestyles, and dietary patterns. Observational studies have long linked low vitamin D levels to increased risk of depression, immune dysfunction, bone loss, and even certain cancers. These associations drove enormous enthusiasm for supplementation. However, large interventional trials have painted a more sobering picture. The VITAL trial, one of the most comprehensive vitamin D studies ever conducted, enrolled over 25,000 participants and found that vitamin D supplementation did not significantly prevent cancer or major cardiovascular events in the general population. Where the research does show consistent benefit is in specific groups: older adults at high fall risk, individuals with confirmed deficiency, and people with limited sun exposure. The takeaway is that correcting a genuine deficiency absolutely matters, but supplementing aggressively when your levels are already adequate produces diminishing returns. Let us spend a moment on the supplement category generating enormous revenue right now: fat burners. Products containing caffeine, green tea extract, Garcinia cambogia, and thermogenic blends dominate fitness marketing. Here's what the science actually says. Caffeine genuinely does increase metabolic rate slightly and can improve exercise performance. Studies show improvements of roughly 3 to 12% in endurance activities. Green tea extract contains compounds called catechins that have modest thermogenic effects in research settings. However, and this cannot be overstated, the effect sizes are small. A comprehensive review in Obesity Reviews concluded that thermogenic supplements produce additional fat loss of approximately 1 to 2 pounds over 12 weeks compared to placebo. 2 pounds. Meanwhile, many fat-burning supplements contain stimulant blends that have been linked to elevated heart rate, anxiety, insomnia, and in severe cases, cardiac events. The FDA has issued numerous warnings about specific fat-burning products containing dangerous ingredients like DMAA and synephrine. The risk-to-reward ratio here deserves serious examination before you commit. Multivitamins represent perhaps the most culturally ingrained supplement habit worldwide. Over 1/3 of American adults take a multivitamin daily, spending approximately $7 billion annually on these products. The promise is simple: nutritional insurance for a less-than-perfect diet. The research, however, is consistently underwhelming when it comes to healthy adults eating varied diets. A landmark analysis published in Annals of Internal Medicine reviewed studies covering 450,000 participants and concluded that multivitamin supplementation did not reduce mortality, cardiovascular disease, or cancer rates in well-nourished populations. A separate long-term study, the Physicians' Health Study 2, followed 14,000 male physicians for over a decade and found no significant cardiovascular benefit from multivitamin use. Where multivitamins genuinely help is in populations with diagnosed nutritional gaps, older adults with absorption issues, pregnant women who benefit from folate, people following highly restrictive diets. Context is everything. A multivitamin is not meaningless for everyone, but it is also not the universal insurance policy the marketing suggests. There is a pattern worth naming explicitly here. Supplements tend to show the strongest, most consistent benefits in two specific scenarios: when correcting a genuine, confirmed deficiency, or when used by highly trained athletes pushing their bodies to physiological extremes. For the general population eating a reasonably balanced diet and exercising at moderate intensity, the marginal benefit of most supplements narrows dramatically. This is not anti-supplement propaganda, it is what the cumulative weight of clinical evidence actually shows. The billion-dollar marketing machine has successfully convinced millions of people that basic good health requires a cabinet full of capsules and powders. But decades of nutrition research consistently point to the same conclusion: whole foods, adequate sleep, regular physical activity, and stress management produce the most powerful health outcomes available to human beings, and no supplement has ever replicated that combination in a clinical trial. So what is the practical framework for making smart supplementation decisions?